Hey everyone, this is Randy from BibleBuyingGuide.com. Today I'm taking a look at the verse-by-verse wide margin CSB from Holman. Comes in a nice sturdy box. Really sturdy, I like that. They call it genuine leather, but it's actually edgeline goatskin. So I don't know why they're not making a big deal about that, but this is good leather. Nice grain, has a nice texture. Perimeter stitching, has a little bit of a pebbly grain to it with an overhang, a yap, a little bit of a yap. Nothing printed on the front. We have the text is stamped in gold, and then we have some spine indications. 3 1/4-inch ribbons in black, red, and gold with black head tail bands. And then edge line liner. I think that's leather, but I don't know that for a fact. Gold gilt line around the perimeter. This is made in China. And there's our edge line. The end sheet, the page that's tabbed in, are glued together. So that makes it a little bit stiff. So it is a little stiff in the front and in the back. It is Smythe sewn, and it does have overcast stitching in the front. The paper is 36 GSM. With 85% opacity rating. This is excellent paper. I love the texture and the feel. It's highly opaque. And as you can see, we have red highlights all throughout this Bible. It is typeset by 2K Denmark, designed by 2K Denmark, using Bible serif font in a 9.5 point. So you can see how that edge line tab is a little bit stiff at the front of it. It will lay down once you get far enough into it. But there's our text, double column, verse by verse, with red highlights. Red for the book names, chapter numbers, and verse numbers. And then the pilot number for the references and the pilot number for the footnotes. And as you can see, the references are placed under the last verse in the column with the last verse on the page. And then footnotes are placed across the footer. They're separated from the text with a dividing line in red. Highly consistent in printing, extremely opaque paper, white in color, has a good texture for grabbing and turning, and it is wide margin, so you can write in this. Then there's our overcast stitch line, as you can see across the edge there, across the inside. This Bible is beautiful to read from, beautiful to teach and preach from. A good amount of space between the lines so that you can underline or highlight. And as you can see, it has a lot of references, lots of cross references. It's a good reference edition. Really good for study and sermon prep. 1 inch for the outer margin, about 5/8 of an inch on the inner margin. And then same for the footer. I love this design and layout. It's just clean. Everything about it is clean. Section headings are in bold and in all caps. Extremely floppy. I mean, if you wanted to curl that around, you can, no problem at all. Roll that up any way you want to. Old Testament quotes in the New Testament are in bold. And other than that is a black letter text. No poetic setting or anything like that. It's just the standard straight verse by verse. So Psalms looks just like everything else. I find the reference and footnote keys small enough to ignore, but they're also easy enough to see. They're there if you want them. Table of weights and measures includes biblical unit, language, biblical measure, U.S. equivalent, metric equivalent, and then various translations. I like that it has various translations. That adds something that most don't have. There's our concordance. Good size concordance. A lot of information in here. For names, it gives you biographical information. So lots of good information in here. Maps are on non-glossy pages. The thick pages with muted colors. I love these colors for maps. They look elegant. I like the way they work, the way they look. Topographical information, lots of annotations. It doesn't have an index to maps, but they're easy to read, they're easy to follow. Lots of information on there. They made them clean. Then let's look at our size and weight. 7 3/8, 9 7/8 for the overall size. I give you this size because that's the size you need if you're going to buy a case or something for it. About 1.5. 2 pounds, 10.1 ounces. There's not a lot to compare this to. Unfortunately, this is not a standard design. I think every translation should have this design. Standard large print with wide margins. That should be a standard design that every translation has. With that said, there are a couple of Bibles I can compare to that are similar. Not exactly, but similar. This is the ESV verse by verse. Footprint is very close. Thickness is very close. It is also a wide margin, and as you can see, it has the same layout with verse by verse, with footnotes in the bottom and with references under the last verse. Now, it doesn't have red highlights or anything like that, but it's very close. The paper is not as opaque, and the print is not quite as dark. Let's compare to a page. Also, the ESV has short book introductions. So let's zoom in and see how these compare. So we have the CSB on the right and the ESV on the left. Here's how they compare. This one's even less similar, but it does have a few similarities that I wanted to compare. They have the same goatskin leather, and they have a similar footprint. This is the New King James large print Premier Collection from Thomas Nelson, and it also has 36 GSM paper, but it's slightly different. It has more show through on the paper. The font is actually a little bit darker on the New King James and slightly larger. But as you can see, the New King James also has red highlights, but rather than verse numbers, it has red highlights for book names, section headings, and chapter numbers, while the CSB has verse numbers instead of section headings. And we'll zoom in and see how they compare. Here's how they look next to each other. I love this Bible. It's not too large of a Bible. It's not too heavy of a Bible. It's great for preaching, for study, for carrying with you. Excellent for teaching. The paper is extremely opaque. The font is dark. It's not too large, but it's not too small. It doesn't feel like a giant print or anything like that, but I don't strain to read it or anything. It's comfortable for reading. So I highly recommend the CSB verse by verse. This is one of my favorite Bibles. I love this Bible. Easy to recommend. So if you're looking for a CSB wide margin, this is excellent. Or even just a CSB reference edition. If you don't care about the wide margins, it's still an excellent Bible. I highly recommend it. The only complaint that I would have is, you can see the way this lays, it's not quite straight. So it looks like it's not exactly straight in the cover, but that could just be the way that it needs to break in a little more. I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, I love this Bible. I highly recommend it. Holman did supply this in exchange for an honest review. I will place some links in the notes where you can make a purchase. I do get part of that sale if you make a purchase through my links. That does help me keep BibleBuyingGuide.com running, and I appreciate any help I can get. And I'll also place a link to BibleBuyingGuide.com to the written review with a lot more detail about this Bible. Thanks.